I'm Jackie E. Davis, creator of Underpants and Overbites, and you're listening to the True North Country Comics podcast.
Welcome to the True North Country Comics podcast, dedicated to promote Canadian comic book and graphic novel creators and supporters. I'm John Swinimer. If you want to drop me a line, you can contact me at john@truenorthcountrycomics.com. On this episode, I chat with Jackie E. Davis about her webcomic, Underpants and Overbites, at the 2022 Montreal Comic Arts Festival. This podcast is available on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. It's also available on the True North Country Comics channel on YouTube. I invite you to like and subscribe. Jackie is a cartoonist based in Rochester, New York. She's been drawing chubby things with googly eyes her whole life, much to the disappointment of her art teachers. She discovered comics and her passion for them around 2015, has been reading, writing, and drawing them ever since. She has self-published 2 comics collections, another from Andrews McNeil. When Jackie isn't drawing, she enjoys playing outside and making new friends, finding things in the ground, cooking lots and lots of soup. Oh, how she loves soup. Underpants and Overbites is a webcomic by Jackie Davis. It's an autobiographical comic about her tiny human life. Frequent themes include friendship, mental health, her tired husband Pat, and fun little adventures around the neighborhood. Everything is drawn traditionally on paper and painted in watercolor. While the humor is geared towards adults, it's wholesome content for all ages. And so, without further ado, here's my chat with Jackie E. Davis about her webcomic, Underpants and Overbites, at the 2022 Montreal Comic Arts Festival. So, Jackie E. Davis, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
Sure, thanks so much for having me.
I appreciate your time. What I usually do to start off the interview is ask the creator about their first comic book. So I'm wondering if you remember, what was the first comic book that you read?
I think I've always read The Far Side as a kid. It was just around, and I was obsessed with cows, and Gary Larson covered a lot of cow content, so I was really into that. And then the first comic book that I read when I said to myself, oh my gosh, I have to do this for a living, was actually Blankets by Craig Thompson.
Right, yeah.
And it's an autobio, story about him and his relationship with church. And I just thought it was so real and beautiful and amazing. And then I was like, I gotta make comics about my life. And mine have a sillier tone, but he's definitely what inspired a lot of what I do.
Yeah, definitely good reading there for sure. Now, I know that those are good inspirations. Is there anyone or anything else that inspires you to create today?
I am really inspired by this sounds terrible, but my lack of ability for conventional employment. I'm
okay.
Well, I got no other choice. I just have to do this weird stuff and hope that I make a living, because I do very poorly with directions from other people.
Well, that's a good inspiration to have to keep you going. That's for sure. Well, we're here talking because you're an exhibitor at this year's Montreal Comic Arts Festival. So with that in mind, I'm wondering, do you have any favorite convention moments that you can share?
Yeah, I mean, I went to Macaf maybe 2 or 3 years ago at this point, and I do remember it was in a park, and for some reason a man was riding a bicycle and it had a little wagon on the back, and he was like, I will give you a ride to the tent. And I was like, okay. And then I rode in a little wagon.
Wow.
With the guy pulling it.
That doesn't happen every day.
I know. I also, when I stand at my table and sometimes there's a lull in the crowd, well, I was standing at my table and I watched a man take a bite out of a baguette, but then he tripped on one of those ropes.
Oh.
But he didn't fall over. He just stumbled, and then the baguette fell out of his mouth. It was a very real moment that the universe kind of wrapped in a bow for me. So,
oh my, those things happen, I guess. So we're here talking, as I said, you're at Macaf, and I'm wondering if you could talk about what you'll be showcasing at the festival.
I will be showcasing just my new comics. I make, 1 to 3 a week, and I'll be producing a few new zines. I'm making a zine about how my car got stolen, but then I used the internet to get it back.
Oh, that's a good story then.
Yeah. I had a book come out last spring, so I'll have those, and I got locally made like t-shirts and tote bags. And
Nice.
I'll also be teaching a comic class. I think it's Saturday, maybe?
Very good. So, sorry, just to go back a bit, you talked about your webcomic called Underpants and Overbites. For those not familiar with it, how would you describe that to someone?
I think people have told me it makes them feel less alone, but in a cheerful way. I guess I would describe Underpants and Overbites as just my tiny human life and all the little unpolished trifles that go into existing, like biking around and noticing the beauty in tiny things and having funny conversations. It's really, I think it's more profound than I make it sound, but it's just adorable characters in watercolor doing relatable human things.
Would you say it's more humorous than factual?
Oh, yeah, definitely. The only facts I can hold in my brain are like the experiences in my own life. One time I fell off a chair, changed the light bulb, and then I'm like, perfect. I'll turn that into a comic. But yeah, it's intended to be funny, but it has some like subtly beautiful moments because I spent probably the first 20 years of my life being only funny, and then I discovered that it was okay to like have other feelings.
I want to switch gears a wee bit and talk about the tools you use to create your art. You mentioned watercolor, and I wonder if you could talk a wee bit about how you get your webcomic done.
Oh yeah, I make everything traditionally with ink and watercolor, and I just use watercolor paper and sketch onto the paper or draw directly with ink. I usually use microns because they're waterproof, and then I paint it, and then I scan everything and like straighten it in Photoshop and then feed it to the internet.
Ah, okay. Now, watercolor is a little unforgiving. Like when you put the brush to the paper, that's it, right? How do you sort of negotiate that with yourself going, well, I'm committing to this now, and here it is. Like, how do you wrestle with that?
Oh, I love it. I love that there's no undo button.
Okay.
And sometimes it's just a straight up disaster. Like a bead of water will run down my brush at the exact moment that the brush makes contact with the paper, and then it's like a tiny bomb went off in my painting, and I'm like, how am I gonna fix this? But there is always Photoshop for like big disasters, and sometimes if I am going to undertake like a big watercolor move, like sometimes I make a night scene and I have to do a Payne's Gray wash, I will scan it before I, try to change it so that I could go back. But mostly I just love committing and seeing what happens. And whatever happens, I'll just learn how to be a better painter next time.
That sounds very adventurous, that's for sure. Now, you talked about doing a panel session about making comics. Now, without going into too much detail, can you give just a little hint of what you'll be saying at that panel?
Oh, it's actually a workshop.
Oh, a workshop. Okay.
Yeah, it's just a workshop for all skill levels to loosen up, and we're going to be drawing some monsters and then writing diary comics about them because I find that people sometimes when I ask them to write about themselves on short notice, they panic. And so this is like a conduit to write about someone else. But it's just like an hour-long class, and people always leave with a smile.
So you've done this sort of thing before then?
Yeah, I think I taught it recently to a group of senior citizens on Zoom, and they loved it. So,
what sort of feedback do you get when you do these type of sessions?
Mostly people are just delighted with their own creations, because my intention of the session is to get you drawing before you can like think too hard about it and get self-conscious. So at the end, most people are just deeply satisfied that they made anything at all.
That's cool. You mentioned this is ongoing webcomic, Underpants and Overbites, but I'm wondering, do you have any other upcoming projects that you can talk about?
My biggest upcoming project is that I'm putting together a website for like the home of Underpants and Overbites, but that will be like I'm going to do a little crowdfunding campaign, but I have to get my files in better order before I can bring other people on board. But that's my biggest upcoming project.
All right. We were talking here about the Macaf event, but I'm wondering, do you have any other upcoming festivals or conventions that you'll be attending?
I will be in TCAF as well. And I got into a convention in England in November, Thought Bubble Festival.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Have you been?
I've not. I've heard a lot of people have gone and had a great time, but certainly traveling overseas for a convention or festival is always a great experience, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think I might have to do a crowdfund for that.
Now, you mentioned you've got a website in the works, but do you have a site where you recommend people go to find out about your current and your future projects?
Oh, yeah. I mean, my website still functions at the moment, but I am hoping to enhance it, and it is underpantsandoverbites.com. And then as far as social media goes, I update my Instagram the most. So that's just at Underpants and Overbites.
Very good. Well, Jackie, those are all the questions I have for you, but I'm wondering, is there something I didn't ask that you'd like to get across in this interview?
I'm just really excited to meet people in real life, so come say hi.
Thanks to Jackie for the chat. You can discover more about Underpants and Overbites at underpantsandoverbites.com and on Instagram at Underpants and Overbites. And thanks to you for listening to the True North Country Comics podcast. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to and like this podcast on Apple Podcasts. And please leave a good rating. Also check out the TrueNorthCountryComics.com website and follow along on Twitter at True North Comics. True North Country Comics is now on YouTube. Please like and subscribe to that video channel. Please send your feedback to John at TrueNorthCountryComics.com. Thanks again for listening, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics Podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2022.